All right, so I'm going to pass the baton to Sharon because what's so important now is to actually hear from one of our teachers who has used these activities, who has revised these activities, and she's going to be able to give you her perspective. Sharon has been partnering with the Pathways Project this last year as a lead teacher and supporting us in the grant, and working with over 16 teachers this year to help mentor them and really walk them through the process that she's been doing herself in her classroom. So take it away, Sharon. I'm going to put myself on mute, stop sharing so that you can showcase your act.
Right. Thank you, Kelly. Well, the activity that I chose is called Meet and Greet. So it's a very early activity for French 1 students. I chose it because it's really difficult. It was difficult for me to find activities that I felt like my really novice low, novice mid speakers could do and feel comfortable doing, but also to find something in the Pathways Project where the activity is basically started for me. I just needed to revise it to make it appropriate for my junior high students, and I remixed in a little bit of cultural elements for it. And so basically when I choose an activity, then I really need to decide first, okay, how am I going to revise it? And usually what I'm looking at is the level of language, and is it vocabulary that we've been working on in class? Because these activities are created obviously by other people, but I know what I've taught my students, and I know that they're going to know the word for to talk instead of to converse. And so just changing that vocabulary and making it appropriate so the input is comprehensible for them. The other thing is with the warm-up would be what I would look, well, let me go back. Actually, when you're looking at the can-do statements, sometimes they can be broad. And so with my younger novice learners, I really want to focus those can-dos on self. And so I may need to change those a little bit to put that focus on them at the center of the activity. And then as I'm looking at the warm-up, I really think about, okay, is there enough here to activate that prior knowledge that they have? Because they haven't done some of this stuff over and over again. So yeah, it's prior knowledge, but how recallable is it? They might need a little more support with that warm-up. With the activity I chose, it's basically you are greeting someone in both formal and informal situations. You are introducing yourself, and then you're asking someone how they're doing. And so for the warm-up in the original activity, it just had the warm-up in the formal form of the language. And so I wanted to change that and make it so that it was in the informal language as well. And so that was the only change that I made to my warm-up. Next, I really wanted to introduce some cultural elements. And so, because most of my students have not been in France or a Francophone country, and so I wanted them to be able to understand what greetings look like in a French culture. And so one of the things that I added was this video, a short video, 1 to 2 minutes, and actually gives you instructions on how to give the bees. And so how to give those 2 kisses on the cheek. And so the video is in English so my students can understand, but then I've created some questions on the right here for them that would be comprehensible for them to understand and make comparisons to their own culture and how they do things. Also mixing in some other cultural elements like maps of France. Students, this will be the first time maybe that they understand how France is divided into departments, but also teaching them how many kisses to give depending on where they are in France. And then in second cultural element, the map, whether you kiss on the left or the right cheek. And so most of my students are pretty nervous about doing the bees. They don't have to do the bees in class, but I always give them the option if they would like to. And so putting in those cultural elements, I think it makes it a lot more interesting for students as well. It's not just about the speaking, but it's learning how the culture actually works, increasing that cultural competence. Then in the main activity, students will choose a famous Francophone person from a stack of cards. And so one of the things that I did that I changed in the activity was making sure that those famous people would be interesting to junior high level students. And so, incorporating musical artists or sports figures that sing the type of music, create the type of music that they like to hear, or play the sports that they like to play in class. So which also hopefully inspires them to learn more about that Francophone culture. In the end, I added in some extra resources that teachers might want to include if they wanted to go a little bit further and talk about some of these little more detail, some of the cultural traditions for greeting each other in French. Yeah, so just again, making it more relevant for my junior high students, keeping it comprehensible, using vocabulary that they are familiar with and that they will know, or that I can make comprehensible for them in class as well. And then keeping those cultural elements, something that they find interesting to keep them engaged in the lesson.